What if nothing in Family Guy was real and everything was happening only inside the broken mind of Stewie Griffin? I know that sounds crazy, but give me 2 minutes, just 2, because what I'm about to show you is one of those theories that once you hear it is literally impossible to turn off. You're going to finish this video and the next time you put on Family Guy, you're going to look at Stewie in a completely different way. A much more uncomfortable way. Let's start at the beginning and with a fact everyone ignores because it seems too obvious. Stewie Griffin is a 1-year-old baby, 1 year old. He shouldn't have vocabulary, let alone plans for world domination. He shouldn't be building time machines in the living room. He shouldn't have a secret lab beneath his bedroom, a weapons arsenal, and an IQ that would put most scientists to shame, but he has all of that. And here's the question that no Family Guy writer has ever answered satisfactorily. The answer that a portion of the internet's most obsessed fans arrived at is more disturbing than anything the show has ever aired, because none of it is real. Because the entire universe of Family Guy, Quahog, the Griffin family, the bar, Neighbor Joe, Quagmire, every random cutaway gag, every senseless absurdity, is a mental construction. An elaborate, detailed, and deeply unstable fantasy living inside the head of a small child with a mind that clearly doesn't function the way it should. Now, before you close this video thinking this is just another baseless fan theory, let me walk you through the facts, because they exist and they are frighteningly convincing. The first sign lies in something simple that everyone notices but no one stops to actually think about. Who can understand Stewie? The answer changes depending on the episode. Sometimes Lois hears everything he says and responds normally. In other moments, she acts as if he's just babbling. Peter sometimes reacts to what Stewie says, sometimes doesn't. Brian always understands everything, always, without exception. This inconsistency has bothered fans for decades, and a Reddit user named iFornication reached a conclusion that became well known across discussion forums. The reason some people understand Stewie and others don't is that the entire show is Stewie's perception of the world. Stewie understands Brian because in his mind the family dog is as much a member of the household as anyone else, so he makes sense. The other characters are filtered through his limited and emotionally distorted perception of reality. When someone understands Stewie, it's because Stewie imagined they did. When they don't, it's his mind slipping, losing control of its own narrative for just a moment. And if that hasn't made you uncomfortable yet, hold on, because it goes much deeper. Think about the inconsistencies in the Family Guy universe. Not the jokes, though the real structural inconsistencies that would make any competent writer scratch their head. Characters die and come back as if nothing happened. Entire episodes are forgotten in the next one. Technology that Stewie invents appears and disappears without explanation. Some episodes happen within a clear continuity, others seem to throw everything that came before straight in the trash. The most glaring example of all is Brian's death. In 2013, in the episode Life of Brian, the dog is hit by a car and dies. The family gets a new dog, Vinny, and life goes on. The internet exploded, fans started petitions, and then a few weeks later, Stewie simply travels back in time, prevents the death, and Brian returns as if absolutely nothing had happened. No character meaningfully processes this. Life continues. The conventional reading is that the writers caved to fan pressure. Maybe, but within the theory we're exploring today, the explanation is different. Brian died because Stewie's mind slipped into a dark place for a moment. And when the trauma became too great, Stewie simply rewrote it. He went back, he fixed it, because in that universe, he can. Because it's his universe. Fans on Reddit have pointed this out for years. The idea that traumatic events in Family Guy are always discarded because inside a disturbed mind, the most powerful defense mechanism that exists is forgetting. You don't have to process grief if you can simply decree that it never happened. But here's the part that completely changes the game, because this isn't just about narrative inconsistencies. It's about what Stewie is. What Stewie Griffin demonstrates throughout the entire series an awareness of the universe around him that no other character possesses. He breaks the fourth wall regularly. And not in the casual comedic way that Peter sometimes does. Stewie does it in a way that feels genuine. He looks into the camera in moments where it seems like he's trying to communicate with something beyond. He makes comments about the structure of the narrative itself. There are episodes where he seems to know that certain things won't have consequences for him because at the deepest level of his psyche, he knows it's all fabricated. The theory that Stewie created the Big Bang, which is literally a canonical episode of the series, that is perhaps the single most revealing moment of all. In the episode of The Big Bang Theory, we discover that the explosion caused by Stewie and Brian outside of space-time was what created the universe. The entire universe. This is presented as a joke, as yet another Family Guy absurdity. But within our theory, it's no joke whatsoever. It's the show admitting out loud that Stewie is the origin of everything, that without him nothing exists, that the universe literally depends on his existence. That is not an accidental detail, that is the show whispering the truth. And then you have to think about who Stewie is psychologically, because this theory doesn't work with just any character. It works precisely with Stewie because he is arguably one of the most complex and disturbing portraits of loneliness and emotional instability ever placed inside an animated comedy. Stewie has an intelligence that completely isolates him. He can't genuinely connect with the people around him because no one around him operates at the same level he does. His relationship with Brian is the only thing that feels real, and even that is dysfunctional, codependent, full of unresolved tension. He demonstrates across multiple episodes a devastating loneliness, especially in the solo episodes with Brian, where the mask of the exaggerated villain drops and a child appears who fundamentally doesn't know how to exist in the world without someone by his side. His obsession with control, the machines, the weapons, the world domination plans, is the textbook portrait of someone who feels that the world around them is chaotic and incomprehensible. and that the only answer is to try to control everything before everything destroys you. And who better to create an entire universe inside their own head where every detail can be manipulated than someone with exactly that profile? Fans across forums like Our Family Guy have pointed out for years that Stewie seems incapable of sustaining real relationships. Even his friendships are marked by intense jealousy, manipulation, and a need for approval that he'll never openly admit. The theory suggests that the Family Guy universe isn't an escape from Stewie's reality. It is Stewie's reality, the only one he's built where he can have some form of connection, even if it's distorted. Now compare this to other famous animated show theories. The dark theory of Rugrats, where all the babies are a product of Angelica's imagination, or the theory that the entire Adventure Time universe is post-apocalyptic. These theories exist because animated shows sometimes hide layers that creators place there consciously, or that emerge naturally from narratives that contradict themselves over time. Family Guy is no different. In fact, it may be the most extreme case, because the show's internal contradiction is so radical that it would need an explanation exactly like this one to make any sense. And the most radical contradiction of all is this: how can a series have a character who literally created the universe, who travels through time, who builds impossible technology, who demonstrates near-divine awareness of his own narrative, and present that character as a one-year-old baby in a family sitcom? The only answer that closes the loop is that the show is not a family sitcom. It never was. Think about the episodes where logic simply collapses, where the rules of the universe change without warning, where characters who should be dead appear alive without explanation. Within the theory, each of those moments is a glitch, a place where Stewie's mind lost the thread of the narrative, slipped, and the world he constructed began to crack. It's like dreaming and suddenly realizing something in the dream doesn't make sense. And instead of waking up, you simply force the dream to continue, even if it's crooked. Stewie's technology is the clearest example of this. He has a time machine, he has a lab, he has weapons of mass destruction, but when the script doesn't need those things, they simply disappear. There's no in-narrative explanation. They exist when Stewie needs them and don't exist when he doesn't, because they're not physical objects in a coherent universe. They're manifestations of what he imagines he possesses. They're extensions of the control he needs to feel. And Watch Mojo, in one of its fan theory analyses, captured this collective perception well. The theory that Family Guy is Stewie's perception of the world has real merit precisely because it explains why the characters around him are all caricatures. Peter is an absolute idiot because Stewie sees adults as incompetent and childish creatures. Lois is rigid and inflexible because Stewie sees her as the disciplinary force he resents. Meg is humiliated and invisible because unconsciously Stewie projects onto her the isolation he feels but can't admit. And here's where it gets truly uncomfortable. If the entire universe is Stewie's mind, then everything that happens in Family Guy, every ignored death, every discarded trauma, every broken rule, and was the portrait of a psyche that cannot maintain coherence. A mind that builds and destroys and rebuilds endlessly, unable to reach a place of stability, unable to conclude, unable to grow, because Stewie never grows. In over 25 years of the show, he remains a baby. He remains locked in a developmental stage that never advances. That is not a random writing choice. Within this theory, it is the most disturbing statement of all. Stewie's mind is trapped, stuck in a loop, building the same universe, destroying it, rebuilding it, never able to get out. The time travel is an adventure. It's desperate attempts to fix something that cannot be fixed, because the problem isn't in the past. It's in the very mental structure that generates reality. And Brian, the only being in this universe that Stewie can genuinely love, the only one he can be vulnerable with, isn't real either. He's the most beautiful and most tragic projection Stewie ever created. A perfect friend who exists because no real friend was ever enough. So the next time you turn on Family Guy and see that big-headed baby in his crib looking around with the gaze of someone who knows far more than he should, remember what you heard here. Remember that maybe that look isn't the look of a villain planning his next scheme. Maybe it's the look of someone who is completely alone inside a universe that only exists because he can't stop creating it. Someone whose mind is brilliant enough to build worlds, but fractured enough to be unable to live in any of them. Family Guy was never a comedy. It was always the portrait of a completely destroyed mind, and we spent decades laughing at the jokes without realizing they were screams. Good luck trying to unsee that.